Hello, everybody. Welcome to the IATA webinar. We will be beginning this webinar in about 4 minutes' time. Just whilst we're waiting for that to happen, I would like to run through a few things that you need to know for today. The first one is a big thank you to our sponsors for this webinar. It's Investissement Quebec, and they are our sponsor for today, and they will be speaking to you today regarding all of the good work that they are doing. And during this webinar, your microphone will be muted, but you do have a Q&A panel, so you can enter questions that our panel can then answer for you, okay? Those questions will be handled at the end of the webinar. Also, there is a chat facility which you have access to, so you can chat with other people through text. Once again, thank you very much for the sponsorship of Investissement Quebec, and your webinar will be starting shortly. Welcome everybody to the IATA webinar. Your webinar will be starting shortly. We will in fact begin in a couple of minutes once we've had a chance for some more attendees to sign in. During the webinar today, you will have the opportunity to ask questions in a Q&A panel. Those questions will be reviewed by our legal team to ensure that we are okay to answer them. And you also have a chat panel that will allow you to chat with other people in this event. I would like to say thank you to our sponsor for this webinar, that is Investissement Quebec, and you'll be hearing all about them later on. And as I mentioned, the webinar will be beginning in a couple of minutes' time. I'm very pleased to see that some people are already making use of our question and answer panel. We have a question about where the recording of the event will be available. It will be available online later on. You will receive an email with the details for that. And that webinar recording will allow you to review everything that was said. But please make sure you stay for our entire webinar so that you take part in the Q&A with our panel today. Okay, so we are just about ready to start here. Once again, I would like to thank our sponsor for this webinar. Our sponsor today is Investissement Quebec, and thank you very much to them for sponsoring this webinar and making today possible. As I've mentioned during the webinar, your microphone will be muted, so as an audience member, I'm afraid you can't ask questions directly. However, we do have a Q&A panel, and that Q&A panel allows you to ask questions. Those questions will be answered at the end of the webinar, so we'll be saving those for the panel to discuss later on. They are being moderated by our legal team to ensure that they meet our competition rules. So today's webinar is on reshaping the passenger experience. It's our special series taking us forwards for the next few weeks. Every Tuesday at the same time, we will be covering a different subject. And today's particular subject is securing the passenger journey. So once again, thank you to Investissement Quebec. And today's webinar, being an IATA event, is subject to our competition law guidelines. So there are various things that we are unable to discuss because we have antitrust and we have to apply competition law to our discussions. So there will be no discussion on fares, charges, traffics, revenues, or anything like that. And our questions are all being monitored by our legal department. So they are flagging up the ones that we are able to answer. So if you do ask a question and you do not receive an answer, please rephrase it in a way that might avoid touching on any individual policies, commercial decisions, or any bilateral agreements. With that, I would like to hand over to my colleague, Sylvain Campeau. I'm very pleased to see you on the screen.
Thank you, Andrew. Thank you, Andrew, and welcome everybody. Today is a very special day with this webinar where we will be looking after securing the passenger journey. We have a set of special guests coming that are all industry leaders working in this environment. And we're going to bring the topic in three different aspects. So we will look after the whole airport situation and how do we deal with the passenger. We will be looking at alternative solution about sanitization that will be a must with the start of the industry. And we will be looking also how technology can support and help the passenger transition to provide a better flow based with the social distancing and all the requirements that are faced into this. Before we start, for the one that have been involved in the webinar last week, we did run some passenger survey, and just to give you some sense, those are done on a weekly basis, on a monthly basis, and 45% of the people, from the last survey, they say that they will be flying within a month or two before the restart, where the previous survey was indicating like 60% of it. And the big challenge that we see in the industry right now is 41% of the booking are done within 0 to 3 days. So the booking are a lot closer to taking the flight than what it is used. So it's really hard to anticipate and schedule, and making the provision for what's going on in the future with this. So basically, the industry with this have to look at how we secure the passenger. We know that the airline industry is a very safe industry, but we are facing the challenge that we need to show the passenger that they need to be confident and be able to work with us on that part and feel safe to travel again. So on this, we have a very special speaker. So we will start with our colleague that is Martin Boyer. Martin is the Vice President, Chief Information Officer at Toronto Airport. And after that, we're going to see Carmen Mathieu from Investissement Québec, that she bring with her two special guests, so Marie-Christine Huberto and Alzira Hassani from Max William. And we're going to finish with Tim McGraw. He's a Senior Business Technology Analyst at American Airlines, talking about technology and the airline experience a little bit. And we'll finish with Andrew Price talking with our baggage solution, because it is needed as well for the passenger. So on this, I will invite our friend Martin to take over and tell us a little bit about all the challenge that we see at the airport right now and how do we deal with this. The Toronto Airport is dealing, with pre-clearance with US border, and we also have domestic and international flights, so it provides all the aspects, you know, and challenge that an airport can challenge. Martin, over to you, please.
Merci beaucoup, Sylvain. Thank you, Sylvain. Good morning, everybody. Just to give you an, I guess, saying that the world has changed during this pandemic is an understatement. Just to give you an appreciation, like all the other part of the industry, in Toronto, we used to have more than 130,000 passengers per day. In the bottom of this crisis, we were down to about 3,000 per day. Now it's back up to 8, and hopefully is going to grow. For sure, the domestic traffic, especially Transcons, is the long haul Toronto-Vancouver, as an example, is where we see a lot of growth. But for sure, we are far to be back where we need to be. What I'd like to highlight is this is clearly, it's not an airport problem, it's not an airline problem, it's an industry problem that we have to fix together. And today I'm very happy to be able to talk to you because the timing is certainly excellent. As at Toronto today, we are announcing our Airport Healthy program, which is a set of initiatives that aim to make the customers feel more comfortable to travel in the industry. And it's built on multiple layers in order to help achieving this. It's to address the customer as well as the employees working at the airport. And I'll give you a few examples. As of June the 1st, all the passengers and employees in the airport are required to wear masks. We obviously have beefed up substantially the entire cleaning approach. We have put a lot of innovation now with some robots that are on a constant basis cleaning and disinfecting the airport. And obviously we are managing systematically the flow of passengers within the terminal to be able to reinforce social distance. If prior COVID-19 we're having a flow problem because simply the building was not big enough in order to handle that volume, at lower volume now, the challenge is to make sure that we keep a social distance between all the customers that's traveling. And this is why it's even more important that the flow is extremely smooth, so there's no passenger congestion in the terminal where it should be. So one of the pieces also that is important is when I was talking about all the initiatives, there's all the disinfection portion of it also, but we revamp and we relook at all our HVAC system to make sure that the quality of air within the terminal is to the highest standard. And now even you can have access to those reports on the quality of air. We want to display to the customer what we are doing, and very shortly the customer will be able to see via our website and some display in the terminal the quality of air and the various dashboard indicating that. One of the key components to it is also the touchless experience. A lot of work has been done with our partners, the airline, in order to build a touchless experience. We know that most of the carriers now want the customer to check in from home, but as they are making it to the airport, they want to be able to print their boarding passes without having to touch the kiosk. So that's why this entire process now have been enabled. So a customer will check in from home. When it will arrive or she will arrive at the terminal, you will have a barcode issued on your phone that you will simply put in front of the kiosk that will allow you that will allow to issue the boarding pass, sorry, the bag tag. And when the customer install the bag tag, the reading of the bag tag and the baggage drop-up will be done without any requirement to touch the system. So clearly we want to go to a touchless environment as much as we can. This is the same thing for the elevator bottoms. When you're getting into the terminal, the parking is the same thing too. So we try to limit every areas where there's a physical contact between the building and the customer. The same way also what we are working is with our employees, where we're experimenting technologies here, where to encourage our customers, our employees that need to be in the terminal to work to enforce the social distance. So those bracelets that the employees will be wearing will essentially send a signal if one of your peers is too close from you. And more importantly, also, we will be tracking the history of those contacts. In a case of a positive case of COVID, we'll be able to contact who was in contact with that employees at some point in time. So all that to say, this is an industry work. At the airport, we are one piece of this fantastic industry, We're doing everything that we can to make sure that our employees and our passengers feel safe so they can start to fly again. So with all that to say, I will return it to you, Sylvain. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Martin. Thanks a lot. And on our next guest, we have the airport, that getting involved, but we hear a lot about government, that need to step in and help the industry. So I'm very pleased to have Carmen Nacu from Investissement Québec. And Carmen will present, what they're doing, not only financing the ecosystem, but also be an integral part of some solution within the industry. So Carmen, over to you, please.
Thank you, Sylvain, and thank you, IATA, for inviting us today. We are very pleased to virtually welcome you to Montreal. So I'm the international affairs advisor for the North American markets in aerospace, defense, and security at Investissement Québec. Investissement Québec is an economic development agency facilitating Quebec business projects, supporting the development of the driving sectors and attracting foreign companies wishing to settle in Quebec. The aerospace industry is a major driving force for our economy and is very well known for its innovation, vitality, and global competitiveness. Montreal is one of the world's free aeronautics hubs alongside Seattle and Toulouse, home to a major global hub for artificial intelligence research, and more than 70% of all Canadian aerospace research and development projects. We have a dynamic industry cluster, Aero Montreal. We have the Consortium for Research and Innovation in Aerospace, and we have a diversified workforce. Our aerospace industry employs over 45,000 workers. And of course, we offer cutting-edge training. Close to 5,000 aerospace students graduate each year. So today, we are pleased to introduce you the autonomous sanitization system for air transport, which is brought to you by two Quebec companies, Maxwellian and Avianor. And I'm very pleased to give the floor to Alireza Hassani from Maxwellian and Marie-Christine Huberdeau from Avianor. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Carmen. Right. So my webcam doesn't work, so I'm a ghost today, but I'm just talking about this project and sanitization. So thank you, Carmen. Thank you, IATA and Investissement Québec, and all the team that make this happen. I'm Alireza Hassani, the CEO of Maxwellian. Maxwellian is a deep tech company focused on smart infrastructures for mobility. We have been working with projects with aerospace for bringing new type of optical sensors for testing a jet engine in harsh environments. We've been working with Canadian Defense Department for bringing new generation of optical sensors for early corrosion detections. And Maxwellian was an award winner last year in LA Mobility in US, one of just only Canadian company in the US that got this award. Today, I want to just focus on sanitization, autonomous sanitizations. And you know that so far, all of the sanitization that we had is very old-fashioned. We use chemical, we use just as a very labor-intensive. And the coronavirus just proved that this kind of sanitization maybe doesn't work anymore. And we need to bring a new technology to mobility, and especially in airports, that's just do the job for future. So I want to just talk about passenger journey and sanitization in airport. Let's assume that the first, I think, touch points in airport is a check-in kiosk. And let's assume that we want to just sanitize a kiosk per passenger, because for coronavirus, probably the most important thing is that per passenger we can sanitize something in real-time manner. Maxwellian just developed a system, a black box, using the UV lights that you can see in the picture. that has a bunch of sensors and connected to cloud. And these systems can sanitize a kiosk in 30 seconds. So how it works, a passenger waits for green lights and go and use the kiosk. Then the system starts in 30 seconds shining UV lights on kiosk and sanitize it for coronavirus. Then gives a green lights to new passengers to come forward and use the kiosk. So in this manner, we can sanitize the kiosk. We can have all of the data, and we can make sure that this is safe in terms of for each passengers. And the good things about this is that this is just one block for one standalone unit, but we can have this box for each checking touch point. And if let's just look at the product a bit, the technology, to see how it happens that we can do this. So in left hand side, we have a bunch of sensor in the box. It's a motion sensor. So the motion sensor actually brings security to the system, because we know that UV light is dangerous and somehow is harmful for human skin. So if somebody jump in front of kiosk, the system turns off the UV lights. We have a GPS, so we know that where we sanitize. We have an exposure sensor that makes sure that any virus. For sanitization, we need a specific dosage of UV, and this exposure sensor makes sure that we have the right exposure, UV exposure for a targeted virus. For example, right now, coronavirus, we can disinfect coronavirus in 30 seconds. We have a temperature and humidity sensor that just we can monitor the environment and just adjust the system based on that. This is and there are other 4 extra slots in these systems for biosensors that in future we can add coronavirus sensor, for example, that the even system can detect the coronavirus or other viruses and act by itself. In the system, we have UV lights in the middle, in the bottom of the system, so the UV lights can be replaced or and we can use different kind of UV lights here. That's an opportunity with these systems. And in right-hand side, we have IoT units. Actually, this is very interesting in terms of, because the IoT units has a microcontroller, so it can control all of the sensors, UV lights, everything's autonomous. On the other hand, it can connect the system to the cloud. So the cloud has 2 advantages. One is you can save the data of sanitization. For example, if in a kiosk you sanitize the kiosk 100 times per day, all of the data, the time, the exposure time, and everything will be in the cloud, so you can always have access to data. On the other hand, gives the ability to even control the system manually by a operator, or even watched by an operator. So this is just one of building blocks for this sanitization ecosystem, autonomous sanitization ecosystem. This is just the hardware. But beside that, we have developed a software, IoT software, that is very interesting in terms of that this assume that we have many of these units in the airport, in all of the kiosks. And for now, maybe we want to just target coronavirus, to disinfect coronavirus. But in future, maybe we want to just target many viruses. So based on how many viruses you want, the software can just brings that the algorithms that gives the UV lights the ability to gives the right dose of UV to disinfect many viruses. Maybe in future you have COVID 2020, I don't know, in 2 years, and we can even reprogram the system to even disinfect the new viruses. On the other hand, the database is very important, because we haven't had that much systematic system, sanitization system that's autonomous and just gives us that access to data and pattern of data. Because at the end of the day, we need a pattern of data so we can have access to that and customize these systems per airport and even per human behavior. So this system gives us this, and even in future we can run AI algorithms or pattern recognition algorithms on that one. That is very interesting. So let's talk about the UV lights. We know that UV lights in past, people use UV lights for disinfecting viruses and pathogens in hospitals. They put these UV lights on robots. There are some viruses in hospitals like E. coli or MRSA that is more stronger than coronavirus, or because coronavirus is fragile if you compare it with these other viruses. And for that viruses, we need a more light exposure or more intensity. But for coronavirus, we can go with low intensity UV lights. And this actually opens another venue for us to using UV LED that has a very long life cycle of 10,000 hours. And we can, right now, there are people working on this to using these things for disinfecting coronavirus. So here we show that, okay, this system can be used for different touch points in airports, baggage drop, desk, gates. So this is a system that, and imagine that we have these systems, all of these units that all connected to cloud and can be controlled with one operator or an operator units, and all of the data can be saved in cloud. So in future, you can have all the pattern for your sanitization for your airport. And this is very important because for decision making in future for mobility, we can use this data. So if I give you a vision about like that, what's the advantage of this, we call it new era for sanitization in mobility. There are advantages with these systems, and first is autonomous, so it's not labor intensive, it's less human error, is manageable. We haven't had that much manageable autonomous system so far for sanitizations. So this can be monitored all the, for example, somebody can sit in New York City and manage all these sanitization systems for all airports in US from New York City. So this is just gives us that power to manage everything. Is exactly like traffic centers in the city that can control all of the traffic lights. It's efficient. So UV lights can be used with customized exposure for different viruses. It's fast, so we can do it per passengers. We weren't able to do this with labor. It's safe, so we have different sensors in the systems that can ensure that no UV exposure exposed to any human or around of the like living elements around of the system. It's adaptable. We can use it for different touch points, and it's flexible. We can use it for future viruses. So this is just a vision and advantage of these systems that we have for the sanitization. So this is not limited to airports. It can be used for passenger aircraft. I let to our company, partner company, Avinor, talk about this, and you see that it can be used here. What I want to tell you here is that the action plan that we have here. So we have these systems. We have an action plan with collaboration with Avinor company in Montreal to bring autonomous sanitizations for cabins. And here our contribution is that Maxvilian core competencies focus on IoT-based optical and data collection systems. And we can use this knowledge and bring this autonomous sanitizations to reality at the first time. So we have 100 years of collective experience in optical and IoT. We've been working with instrumentation and for aerospace tests and real-time IoT monitoring for defense and infrastructures. I want to give the floor to Marie-Christine, and thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, Ali. So my name is Marie-Christine. I'm the Vice President of Sales for Avianor. Before I begin, I would, of course, like to thank IATA and their partners, and as well as Investissement Québec, for inviting Avianor and Maxvilian to present this project. It is a real honor. Avianor has operated in the aeronautical business for over than 25 years. In 2018, Avianor joined Drakkar, an outsourcing provider for aerospace, defense, transportation, and the retail industry. Drakkar is based in Montreal and has a workforce of over 2,500 employees. Avianor customers consist of aircraft manufacturers such as Airbus Canada. Over the past 3 years, Avianor has spent 25,000 man-hours on the A220 program and is the center of excellence for this aircraft. Avianor also works closely with numerous airlines around the world, as well as aircraft leasing companies and OEM. Avianor is approved to manufacture certified aeronautical product, and we are experts in design, integration, and certification of passenger cabin solution. Avianor holds over 250 STCs and holds TSO products, which are approvals that are required to install parts in an aircraft. Avianor is also an aircraft maintenance organization approved by Transport Canada, the FAA, EASA, to perform aircraft modification and heavy maintenance. Perfect, next slide. The events that have taken place in the past few months have changed the way we view flying. Instead of being this mostly enjoyable experience, people have realized that they are confined in a closed environment where they are exposed to potential viruses. People are scared and they do not feel safe. Now, imagine the future. Imagine entering an aircraft cabin that has been completely, fully sanitized. Wouldn't that make you feel safer as a passenger? Imagine going into a lavatory and knowing that it has been autonomously sanitized before entering. Wouldn't that improve your flight experience? And imagine flight attendants preparing snacks, beverages in a location that has been previously sanitized. Don't you think that it should already be this way? Along with wearing masks, social distancing, a proper air filtration system, physical barriers between passengers, Avianor is convinced that an autonomous sanitization system working throughout the cabin will significantly improve the passenger safety and will restore their confidence. Doesn't this sound like the future? Going to the next slide. Whoop. Was a bit too quick there. So we all know that this crisis has been very hard in the industry. Avianor is committed to help its customers through the development of creative solutions. At the beginning of April, Avianor has designed, certified, manufactured, and installed cargo conversion kits in Air Canada's 777s. All that in only 6 days. Since then, Avianor has converted over 15 aircraft and is now working on the 787. Avianor was able to react quickly and adapt its offering to the new reality. By doing this, we are proud to have contributed to bring home urgent medical supplies and supported the fight against the pandemic. Right now, Avianor is developing onboard certified solutions for passenger isolation during flight. Avianor was the first company in the world to certify this type of cargo conversion. Avianor is striving to become the first to design, integrate, certify, and install the Maxwell onboard autonomous sanitization system. We believe in Maxwell technology, and we can't wait to see it fly. Thank you all for listening.
Thank you. Thanks. That's very interesting, Carmen, and thanks for bringing some solution on the table. You know, that is innovative, and you know, I'm pretty sure that will trigger a lot of questions at the end of this presentation, basically. I will move on the next topic just for time control. So the next topic, we have seen now the challenge and what is done at the airport level. We have seen some new technology, that can interact and help with the sanitization and build the confidence back there. All this combined with, filter on board and, the position, all the survey that have been done with IATA to demonstrate that it is safe to fly and, this industry take every single step to go there. We will move into technology sides with the airport system that we see there. We have to think about, social distancing and, the challenge we have been facing with this. In terms of the technology, if we look back pre-COVID, there was some study going on putting, the passenger traffic that was doubling and having an infrastructure challenge to face, ahead of us. And suddenly, within a few weeks, the world had changed completely. And so the traffic have dropped, and we're facing a new challenge with this. But social distancing still put a requirement of having a passenger flow in the terminal. I would say it's even more important than what we have seen before. So on this, I would like to invite Tim McGraw. He's from American Airlines, so having his hat on the airline side. But he's also the co-chair of the Common Use Working Group, so looking at technology and really involved in IATA, helping to develop standard and solution for the whole industry. So Tim, over to you, please.
Thank you, Sylvain, and hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. As Sylvain has said, there's a lot of changes going on in the industry with this pandemic. And really what we've been doing is, in some respects, addressing some of the things already. But if we want to kind of take a look at the technology side, one of the things I think you're going to see in the airlines themselves, and I think each and every one is looking at what they're doing both on their dedicated systems as long as the common use systems. So you have to keep in mind the airlines actually have two processes: what they do in their proprietary areas in airports where they have dedicated equipment, and then what we do in the common use environment. And really, the need to speed technologies is very important. If you take a look at our technology challenges and this need to speed, for example, if I talk about common use self-service, we began developing that, believe it or not, back in 1999, and here we are a little over 20 years later, and it was developed using a technology called Corba. When we discussed Microsoft and using Windows, that at that time was thought to be just a phenomenon in the United States. Little did we know that Microsoft would basically take over the world, so to speak, in using their products. So right now, our technology for common use self-service is written on a Corba platform versus Windows. And we're currently going through that change now, but it takes quite a bit of time in order to do that. For example, we started this work last year, and here we are in 2020. We're still going through the technical documents to produce a version 2.0 that goes using Microsoft Windows, gets rid of Corba. And we actually have to go to the Joint Passenger Services Conference later this year to get its approval. And then once that is approved, it would become effective in 2021. And it will take us another 2 years to actually migrate over to 100% of version 2.0. It will be backwards compatible with our previous version 1.5. And that actually gives us some other things as far as security features. But more importantly, both of those will address biometric technology. So you can see that it does take some time for us to get things out. In some cases, it's a little easier for carriers to do it on their proprietary environment. For example, we're going to be rolling out a process that Martin mentioned earlier, is where the customer will check in advance, have their barcode on their boarding pass, arrange for their baggage check or number of bags. They will go to the kiosk at an airport, scan the boarding pass. And our applications have to be written to do this too. It's just not smoke and mirrors. And then it would then generate the bag tags based on if the person had to pay for baggage check or if it's complimentary baggage check. All that would be done in advance. So when they arrive at the airport, there would be a touch-free solution there. Now, moving on, what we're really looking for is flexible modular solution for common use, both for the common use passenger processing systems, which is your agent facing, the common use self-services we've mentioned, and things such as self-service bag drop. Again, areas where we want to go into a touchless environment. And then of course, looking at the agent counter options, the contactless options, and the short, medium, and long-term solutions. So again, a short-term solution is where we'll be having the customer check in advance on the airline's website, then take their mobile device and of course, print the bag tags using a touchless solution, the self-service kiosk. More medium, long-term solutions, depending on the carriers, would be having a takeover session where the customer would use their mobile device, cell phone, as such, and actually it would interact with the self-service kiosk. That's going to be done in two areas, like I say, in the proprietary environment and then also in the common use environment. And several of our strategic partners at IATA who offer common use self-service solutions are also offering that product. And again, the long-term solutions, will include things such as security, and I don't want to get into too much of the technical areas of it, but that we kind of tend to forget about with the pandemic is the securing of passenger data, whether it be credit card data, customer information, and so forth. So the transportation layer security that we use is also being updated so that we are ensuring that we have a safe environment in the sector of privacy and security of credit cards and so forth. And really the need for flexibility to adapt to all requirements. Looking at modular add-on to self-service solutions. A couple of years back, here in the United States, we had the Americans with Disabilities Act, which required us to modify self-service kiosks. And basically that was an add-on. In some cases, rather than having to develop a whole new kiosk, there were what we call sidecars that you could actually attach that would allow you to meet those requirements. Because again, with the ADA requirements, it was for visual issues where you could have audible commands to walk you through the kiosk check-in process. So again, looking at that, that could be a biometric technology solution. And keeping in mind, it took us probably a good 25 years from the time we started talking about biometric technology to coming up with what's going to be the solution that we're going to probably use. And lately, we've been seeing a lot in facial recognition. And facial recognition seems to be where we'll be going forward. But I think one of the things the pandemic has brought up is customers wearing masks. Can we still use facial recognition and successfully use that for a biometric technology? Or are we going to have to shift to possibly something like an iris scan or something like that? So again, we have to be very flexible in what happens based on what's going on in the world with things such as a pandemic that we would have never envisioned, just a few months ago. And really, the other piece is enabling interaction with mobile solutions that I mentioned earlier, is that we want the ability for the customer to take over that transaction. So again, if they can use their handheld device to interact with the check-in process, that would eliminate the need to touch the kiosk itself. And obviously what we saw in a couple of the former presentations, some really great solutions for cleaning and disinfecting kiosks or any touch points. But I think we need to keep into reality is what will the cost be, and how do we actually integrate that very effectively for cleaning the whole airport on board the aircraft. And just kind of looking and thinking where the carriers are today, we don't have the investment money that we would have had, say, had things been normal, right? In a good time, projects have to have a return on investment, typically in somewhere in the neighborhood of 12 months. Now, will that be shorter? Will it be longer? It is a very good question. But I think in taking both our technology updates as well as looking at some of the things in product updates as far as not so much the computer automation technology, but again, the disinfecting technology and putting those together. The other piece that we want to talk about is the need to technical standards. Again, everybody kind of does their own thing, so to speak. And with our technology standards, it ensures the airlines know what to code to a specific standard. For example, in our proprietary environment, I'm already using Microsoft Windows, where in the common use environment for self-service, I'm having to use Corva. So that's one of the areas. Then, of course, the technical standards that we have in our groups. We have multiple groups within the common use group. We have the IATA Peripheral Technical Appreciation Group. That was actually formerly the AEA PECTAB standard for the parametric table, and that was how we communicated with printers, gate readers, and so forth. And with the ability for IATA to take that on, we're going to have ability to update that. Probably, I'm going to say, when we're talking about speed to deliver, we'll be able to do so that more efficiently too with that. And of course, we have another group we have is the Common Use Web Services group. Another very important piece is as far as putting that communication protocol back and forth, especially as we begin to see more of the what I'm going to call self-service bag drop, potentially self-boarding. And one of the things I wanted to mention about self-boarding is you tend to think that you have to have a large contraption for a portal for the customer to go through. Actually, today, many of you that are on the call probably have traveled and used your cell phone for check-in with your boarding pass. Most airlines do not handle your cell phone. You handle it yourself. You place it on the device at the gate for reading the barcode, and then you proceed to boarding. We've also done that with the paper boarding passes. If a customer can take their cell phone and read the barcode, the customer can also take their paper boarding pass, read the barcode. So you're limiting the exchange of a customer actually having to give a document to an agent hands it back to the customer. So there's no interaction there, physically touching between the two folks. And then also we have the barcode boarding pass group. And in that area, we also have to put in information in the barcode, and we found biometric data as being important, but we also found some running into some issues with privacy issues and some of the things with identifying gender beyond male, female, and so forth was starting to become an issue. And some of the things that we're trying to implement, we've actually gotten some pushback on. But again, we have to have those technology standards so that we can go from one airport to another airport in a common use environment, or one airline to another airline in a common use environment. So really our work right now, from looking at what the pandemic has done, one of the things that we are actually being very effective on, similar to this webinar, is using team sessions. Normally, to really get a lot done, we require a face-to-face session. And with the technology groups that we have, we've been very successful in running probably weekly meetings in basically about a 2-hour session. You don't want to run much more than about 2 hours because you start to lose people. And of course, there's other things that they have to do in their normal business day. But I really want to shout out to the strategic partners in helping with these technology solution groups, and specifically with the Common Use Self-Service in proceeding with the version 2.0. That, without the ability to, like I say, need to face-to-face, or what we've actually moved to in the team sessions, have been quite effective. I don't want to say too many products that they're using out there, but we are using Swagger Hub, a product for doing the updates, and that's been very effective in thanking IATA for picking up the licenses for those to be done with the Common Use Self-Service. And then now we're coming up with the Common Use Web Services group that will be doing the same thing. So, you know, a big shout out to both our member airlines, the strategic partners at IATA and IATA themselves, and also working with some of the other entities such as Airports Council International, so that we're doing things not only between the airlines and the airports. And of course, Martin with GTAA, Toronto Airport being very actively involved in our groups, and we certainly appreciate that.
Thank you. Thank you, Tim. That's great, and I'm pretty sure we'll keep the question for the end there. But I think it's
Absolutely
great that we look at some technology, and definitely, you know, I think the industry will have to be very creative to find some touchless environment, you know, without investing in technology on the short term, you know, because of the financial challenge that the whole ecosystem is facing with this. So we'll leave the question for the end. If you allow me, we'll go with the last presenter, because of course the passenger journey will not finish without taking care of the bags. So on that topic, I would like to invite my colleague Andrew Price, that is the head of Global Baggage Operation. Andrew, over to you, please.
Thank you very much, Sylvain, and thank you everybody who's joined us today. It's good to have you with us. So yeah, we're going to just very briefly touch on some of the things that we can do in the baggage environment. As Sylvain mentioned, I look after the global baggage operations here at IATA, and I've been very lucky to be involved with discussing things with a number of airlines. So what we want to look at is what can we do today to help our passengers feel safe when they travel with a bag. Yeah. So there are two parts to this journey. There's the outbound part. So the passenger arrives at the airport of origin and is going to board a flight. And then there's the inbound part. The flight lands, the passenger is going to collect their bag back again. So on the outbound part, if you have already the capability inside your airline, then being able to give them the option of using electronic baggage tags, home printed baggage tags, or off-airport services are all critical areas where you can speed the passenger flow through the airport. Yeah, so it's a simple thing. If when I arrive at the airport, my bag is already tagged, then I can very quickly go and use a bag drop, and I can very quickly pass through the airport without necessarily having to join any particular queues. Then on the inbound side, in the arrivals hall, allow the passengers to take care of their own physical distancing, but at the same time, try and keep groups from a single origin together. Yeah. So, you know, all flights from, I've put here Toronto, but it could be all flights from Canada go to a particular reclaim. All flights from the UK go to another reclaim. And perhaps you would separate some areas with a distance if possible. So if you can put an extra space in between belts as they're being used, then that's even better. One of the processes that we've seen being used today is that the airline itself, or the handling staff at the airport, are unloading the carousel and then calling passengers forwards. So they're then calling out, you know, Mr. Price, your bag is ready, come and get it. And then the passenger can come forwards, collect their bag and move on, all the time allowing the passenger to keep their physical distance sorted out, you know, looking after that aspect of it themselves. So these are just a couple of tips of what we can do today, right now, in order to help passengers. Now, you're probably thinking, well, what can we do in the longer term? And in the longer term, we have a webinar that is on next week, which allows you to consider all of the things that we can do to travel contactless. And I'm hoping that during that webinar, we'll be able to do an in-depth on the use of electronic baggage tags so that we can look at that area, because those can be implemented quite quickly for most airports. So Sylvain, do you have some comments just before we go into the Q&A session?
Andrew, I'd just like to thank everybody, you know, the participant for the presentation itself. In conclusion with this, you know, I think we have to look at the challenge itself, you know, financial challenge. I think it was brought up in a few occasions as well. And, you know, we have to look at a layer approach into this. So basically, when we do this, there's a lot of technology that already exists. There's a lot of process that already exists that can provide a quick win. So those need to be implemented, and think out of the box. And I think we have great leadership in this industry to do this, and move forward and look at permanent solution into this area as well. And I'm very pleased to see that this whole industry is working together in the ecosystem, from airport, airline, and trying to revive this safe environment, of flying and of freedom. So thank you all. I think Andrew will be ready for some questions. So I'll go over to you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sylvain. So yes, indeed, it is now time for our Q&A session. And these Q&As are audience submitted items. And they've all just disappeared from my screen. How unfortunate. It's okay, I've got it back. Right, okay. So these have come in as we've been speaking. So you will have a bit of an order to them. So I'm going to jump through a little bit. Let's have a look at one of these here. So I believe this is a question for the team. Well, actually, I'll let anybody, but it's probably going to be for Ali, if I can bring you on to make sure that you have audio. Okay, Ali. So the question here is, in case of new viruses, how quickly can the solutions that have been presented be updated? What are the signs of sanitized areas or elements of for passengers to validate and feel confident of such sanitization? Yeah.
So great question actually. So in terms of new viruses, we can always, for new viruses, we need to do a test with a new. We need to find the dosage that we need for UV dosage that we need to just break down that viruses or disinfect it, and it can be done in a lab, and then we can exactly know how much dosage we need, and we just reprogram it. So it is reprogramming in the system is very easy. It's a matter of just maybe days, but to find that dosage just probably takes like a week or 2-3 weeks to do it in the biolab.
Thank you very much.
And in terms of UV lights, I don't know if I answered all the questions.
No, Ali, please let me go through and ask them one at a time. I know you can see the list that we have, but otherwise we won't get through them all. But on that topic, as you started talking about it, UV lights, yeah, that's an interesting question in terms of what happens to the areas that are hidden on the kiosk. Kiosks quite often have a nice form to them with some curves, maybe some niches, especially where you put the passport. What happens in those areas?
So it is a matter of, like, if you want to disinfect kiosk, then usually is a touch screen and is like a keyboard there. So it's easy for like each of these lights has a pattern that how much exposure, like the field that in pattern. So based on that, we want to do this. We can install the kiosk, the system on top of the kiosk that directly shine the UV lights on the touch screen and anywhere that we think that passenger wants to touch. And that can be done with one single UV lamp. And based on the range of these UV lights actually is not more than one. Like there is no risk for passenger in terms of exposure, because after one half a meter there is no UV light exposure, and we can control this. It's have done before and studied.
Thank you. Okay, so this is a question perhaps for Sylvain and for Tim, and it's about standards for CUS systems. So it's how can we have standards that all airports in the world can have a similar CUS system that's able to integrate with the passenger data. I believe you've got a CUS standard, but I will let you answer it, please, Tim or Sylvain.
Sure. Yes, we do have the CUS standard today for self-service. Currently, we are at version 1.5. And so any airport today that has common use self-service out there globally is following the CUS standard. So that we have today. And again, like I say, we're developing the version 2.0, which actually, like say, pre-pandemic has some very important things into it, from, like I mentioned, the security, and also going to a programming level where we can actually get developers to do that. Again, the old Corba, there are not that many Corba developers out there, or you've got to train the individuals for developing the Corba. So we're actually advancing that with the version 2.0. But again, all the airports out there today that have common use self-service are following the CUS standard.
Thank you very much, Tim. So one of the other questions we've got here is hopping around a little bit, but a question for Avinor. I think it's for Avinor anyway. It's from Fahim, who's in our panel, in our audience. Can you provide us with some of your customer airlines? So what type of airlines is it you work with, Avinor, please? Oh, you're muted. Let me... Just try one more time, please, Marie, to see if you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Do you hear me now?
We do, yes.
Okay, great. Well, I've mentioned, I believe, in the presentation that we've worked with Air Canada on the cargo conversion. So Air Canada is one of our close customer here. We work with Sunwing, a lot of airlines located in Canada and also around the world. So we've done some project for Gulf Air. We've done some conversion for WestJet as well. So that gives you a bit of an example, like some example of our customers. I hope this answers the question.
Thank you very much. I think it does, yes. There is a question here that I'd like to throw open to anybody in the panel. I think it will be our last one. And it's, how can we strike the balance between security and autonomous systems, such as a self-bag drop or self-service and mobile boarding passes? What about any loopholes for digitization, and also any considerations for cybersecurity in these areas that you'd like to touch on at the moment? Because that was another question that we had.
Well, I think that's one of the things that I mentioned. One of the things, not getting too technical in what we do, but if you're familiar with what's called TLS, the Transportation Layer Security, those versions, and having the latest version, that was one of the things that we did in the common use self-service, which was very important to us because, again, it gave that additional level of security with customer data. So there are things that we're still, even though we have the pandemic out there, we have to be very conscious of those things because, again, during this state of a pandemic, there are people out there that will take advantage of the situation. And of course, we will continue, to enhance the security of the platforms. And again, like I say, the TLS, or Transportation Layer Security in itself, another version is coming out with it. And of course, we'll be incorporating that into the common use.
Thank you, Tim. So just before we close, I'd just like to ask any of our panelists, especially those who haven't had a chance to speak, Carmen and Martin, do you have anything that you would like to comment on before we wrap up?
The only thing I would say is I'm absolutely convinced that as we're moving forward, this is an industry solution that we have to bring forward. It's all together as an industry that we're going to emerge from that, and not as an individual subset of this industry. And that's why I feel that a webinar like this one is so critical to help us to make sure that we're as aligned as possible to develop a solution that will help us to restore this industry.
Thank you, Martin. And Carmen?
I agree with Martin, and if we want to have a resilient air transport industry, this is what it takes, a close cooperation between industry and regulators and local authorities, but that's for sure we have solutions, and I'm sure there are other solutions. That's the most, to me, that's the most important to keep in mind, that we have solutions that exist, that have been tested in other industries, and they are efficient, and I think they can help secure the passenger journey, and they can get back the confidence of the passengers.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Carmen. Well, the only other questions that we've had throughout the webinar have been about where can we get this? Where can we get a recording? Where can we get the materials that are available? There are a number of these available. Please have a look at the IATA website. You will also receive a survey to fill out after the end of this webinar. If you could please do that, and that will also have the links for the recording in it. I would just like to also mention that those common use self-service specifications are available from IATA, as are the IATA technical standards for peripherals. I can never say this title properly, but that's a very useful document as well. So again, that's available from IATA. And then I would just like to thank Investissement Québec again for sponsoring today's webinar. We really appreciate you taking that initiative for us. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our session. So I will be closing the webinar down, and thank you very much again, everybody, for taking part.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good day now.
Thank you. Bye-bye.